I'm here to talk about value of design. I get this question a lot, and when people say value, they often indirectly are talking about money. And we know, obviously, there's a lot more to design than just money. But I am going to talk about money because for those people that want to talk about money, I'm here. Let's take you back, right? Because everyone's been taking each other back. So this is around 1970s when 50% of architects worked in the public sector. There's a lot to be missed about images like this. There's a lot not to be missed about images like this. For example, the very diverse population of architects working there. Probably also most people don't miss the drawing boards that you have to lean over and break your backs over. So sadly today we have about 1% of architects working in the public sector, and in London it's about 0.16, so tiny. Not because we don't have the supply of architects, just because the vast majority of those roles, and the traditional named roles that you understand to be for architects, have disappeared. That doesn't mean there isn't space for architects to be there, just not the title architect perhaps. You have to find your ways to get into the public sector. So let's head to East London, 2020. Big ambitions, Barking and Dagenham. Put together Be First. And this is where I had my interview with Jacob and Pat Hayes. Sold this big grand vision for Be First's ambitions on local authority-led house building. And yeah, very much they stuck to it, This is that team. Also a slightly different team. Doesn't look like the 1970s team. We came from architecture, urban design, landscape, community engagement backgrounds, but we were all in the tent shaping delivery from the inside. So let's show you what that enabled. And the theme of all of these projects is going to be somebody came to us with something and we said, how about this instead? Okay. So this started with a planning team coming to us with, we need the SPD refreshed. It's about 10 years old, and it's written in a language which is very design prohibitive. So we were like, what about retrofit? What about community? What about a digital design code? And how do we make that happen? So yeah, all of that needs money, right? What did we do? We went to the DLUC, we went to GLA, we won about £250,000 to turn what was going to be a SPD refresh into a community co-designed, retrofit-led SPD and design code with a website as well as a design guide on how you can retrofit your home to get to the net zero carbon. Tiny example. Another one, walking past a hoarded site that was due for demolition and not going to be touched for about 3 years. So the question of what if, instead of hoarding, was can this be an interesting space for the local community in the middle of lockdown? So yeah, we brought together Steph with Urban Symbiotics, did some incredible co-design work, all virtually while Miro and Mural had just launched, so we were the cutting edge of testing digital tools of engagement. We used the social value contributions of the contractor to draw in 100K's worth of funding to fully fund a 1,000 square metre project for about 100K with incredible, about 70% of the contents of that park is recycled or going to somewhere else after that. And it's still up there. It's been used for Islamic prayers for Ramadan, Easter egg hunts, birthdays, etc. Another project, Padnell Hall. So in this case, we had somebody in the council come up to us saying there's a bit of money that the DCMS, which Department for Cultural something, have to give to youth centre provisions in UK. Desperate to give away this money. So they're like, well, we can bid for it. And I think we can get $1 million. I'm like, we can get more, When they fund projects like that, they want exemplary, right? So how about we go for a BREEAM outstanding project and get some proper designers in to retrofit an existing building instead of demolishing it. So we put in a small design-led proposal, almost doubled the funding we got, moved away from using a Fusion 21 procurement framework, which is predominantly dominated by multi-disc teams, not really design and architect, led to the GLA's new designers framework. Baked in BREEAM, which, so that all of that obviously added cost to the project, but we won all of that funding from central government. Again, brought in some incredible engagement, worked with RCKA, and this is on site right now. And lastly, this is the kind of maybe the boring stuff, right? Procurement. You always think of that with local authorities, right? But this is like the kind of framework of making and unlocking projects. And you know, Jacob has probably spent 3 years of his life at BFirst working on the new designers framework there. But it was also about how do we unlock proper social value out of our contracts where we're spending over £1.1 billion to contractors, and most of their social value contributions end up being your apprenticeships with some local colleges or some like volunteer days, really boring stuff. But if actually you've got to take 1% of that, which is a lot of money, right? You're in tens of millions of pounds. And we thought about how do we work with incredible charities like Open City Accelerate? How do we work with the London Neighbourhood Scholarship? How do we actually do meaningful projects with young people instead of just let the contractors decide how to do good social value, which, let's be honest, they're great at building, but this isn't necessarily their forte. So, yes, in a nutshell, what do designers do? In my view, designers add a shit ton of value. And this is something I've been contending with, but I've been gathering evidence slowly to put in front of people when I get asked this question. And it's not necessarily some of the projects that Jacob showed earlier, which is all the value we add in built housing projects. These are all the things that behind the scenes stuff. And in-house particularly matters being on the ground. And I mean, this is a quote from Jonathan Smells. I met him a couple of months ago, and he basically said I would hire architects for every position if I could. And I agree with him, because architects are strategic thinkers. They're problem solvers. They bring vision. They carry people. They're conveners of people. And designers as a whole, I think, have this capability that's being beyond architects, but empowering from within. In 2025, though, this year, Jacob's already set the context, but council housing is slowing down for a number of reasons. We've got higher interest rates, projects are on pause. We've got huge, bold visions by government, but the reality of delivery is very different. This is a time, the BFirst design team, for example, went from 11 to about 2. And this is the cyclical nature of how design teams and design departments and council housing building goes, unfortunately. But this is the time when resources are extremely tight, is where you need the power of resourceful thinking of designers to come up with interesting ways. Otherwise, you'll get the images of blocks that Rory showed when that building was demolished, unfortunately. And that's being built all over the country, as many of us will attest. So now is an important moment. And my big kind of plea is design is not decoration. It's genuinely delivery infrastructure. And it's crucial and fundamental infrastructure that when the times are hard, that infrastructure is more important than when the times are good. Thank you.